Hello and thanks for joining me for another video. I'm Paul Lucas, and in this video I'll show you a journey that I've wanted to do for years and years. 18 hours on a sleeper train from Stockholm, Sweden up to Narvik in Norway, well inside the Arctic Circle. I'm going to be taking the Arctic Circle sleeper train in a solo sleeper, and it's going to be fantastic. Also, a big shout out and thank you to Dashlane, who are sponsoring this video. Keep your digital life secure and never forget a password again. Our journey today begins at Stockholm Central Station, which is 148 years old. Following the opening of a new station for commuter trains a couple of years ago, nowadays Stockholm Central serves mostly regional and intercity trains. There are self-service left luggage lockers at various points on the station, and I made good use of these as I was actually connecting from an intercity service which had departed Gothenburg earlier in the morning. The station is a pleasant enough place to wait for a few hours, but if I were you, I would head out into Stockholm city itself, especially if you've got a long connection. There is a first class lounge here, but unfortunately my sleeper ticket didn't grant me access. The restaurant cars on board the Arctic sleeper train are reasonably good, but if you don't fancy taking your chances, or you just want something to eat before you leave, there is an extensive food court and shopping area underneath the station. I was really looking forward to getting on board, so I headed out to the platforms early. Our train actually arrived from the depot, headed by an RC class locomotive. If you do take this train, be mindful that the rear half actually goes to Luleå in Sweden. Only the front half goes to Narvik, so be careful, check your ticket and make sure you're in the right carriage and berth. Don't worry too much though, there are extra signs on each carriage for extra reassurance. You'll need to book in advance for this sort of trip with SJ, Swedish Railways. This is the first time I'd ever booked with SJ, so I needed a customer account to buy and retrieve my tickets. You seem to need an account and password for everything these days. Dashlane creates and remembers unique and secure passwords for everything you do online. It'll store your passport information, different credit cards and home address. Dashlane also works across multiple devices. Something else I really love about Dashlane is that it will alert you if any of the accounts that you link to it get breached online, and it even checks the dark web for added security. I travel about 100 times a year, and I know that this product is going to save me hours and hours and hours of time. Go to dashlane.com/Paul to sign up. The first 200 people that do so using that link and using the coupon code Paul at checkout will receive a sweet 10% off Dashlane Premium. Go check it out. I already use it and I love it. Now, let's get to the Arctic Circle. Sweden is like much of continental Europe in that the platforms are much lower than the train floors. Therefore, there are a few steps up, so be careful if you have large bags. The corridors are actually much wider than the fisheye lens on my GoPro camera makes it look in this footage, so don't worry if you have big bags, they will certainly fit down this corridor. Each bed space is called a berth and comes with a berth number, which you can see handily signposted on the walls next to the relevant doors. Now, I've actually got solo occupancy of 4, 5 and 6, this entire room, all the way up to Narvik. The cost, 824 Swedish krona, that's around about £68. A bargain for 18 hours of comfortable travel, access to a shower and your bed for the night.
Good evening and welcome on board on SJ 9 train number 94 bound for Luleå and Narvik.
As we speed north from Stockholm, now is a good time to have a look at our room all the way up to the Arctic Circle. The first thing that comes to mind is this large window. This can be opened using a catch at the top here. It is a lot more easy if you use two hands. Of course, I've got my camera in one hand here. Accompanying the window is a blind. This can be set to go just halfway down the window using this latch, or you can pull it all the way down and secure it using a button at the bottom, and that will block out about 95% of the light during the day. There are actually 3 beds in this room, and therefore there is space for 3 people on this long bench seat. This is the centre bunk just here and will fold down. We'll have a look at that later. At the bottom here is a sofa bench seat, and that will convert into the lower berth if necessary. There's also a top bunk, which I won't need to use today, but it is a handy storage place for all the bedding. Finally, there are detailed instructions on how to make up and put away the beds, but if you're stuck, you can always call the sleeper cabin attendant. There is one per carriage. Although my cabin isn't an ensuite, it does have a private wash basin, although the pressure, as you can see here, was pretty disappointing. There's also a conveniently located electrical socket, which you could use I suppose for shaving or for charging anything else, a vanity lamp and a large mirror. There's also controls above the sink for the air conditioning and climate control. Above the sink is a good sized rack which holds my cabin case with no problems. There's also a ladder here which is very useful in case you need to reach the top bunk. This actually pops out and you need to stand on the first couple of rungs to even get into a position where you could swing yourself into the top bunk. It's definitely not something for the less flexible. There are also coat hangers and hooks here for hanging clothes. This is pretty useful because you're going to need, I hope, a change of clothes for the next day. The light switch is located next to the door. There are also duplicated controls above each berth, including attendant call buttons and individual reading lamps. There's also another charge socket just above the second berth. The toilets are located at the end of every corridor. Every one that I used on this train was spotlessly clean at every point of the journey. There's also additional rack space in the corridor for very large bags. A lot of people take this train to go skiing. Other accommodation includes the couchettes. Now these are 6 berth compartments with basic bedding. There's also a seated carriage, but I imagine the vast majority of people in here are not taking the train all the way overnight. This train stops in a number of places in Sweden and also acts as an intercity train. Finally, there's a dining car around about the middle of the train. This is a very convivial place to get a meal. There's a reasonably good selection of hot and cold meals on offer for reasonable prices. Payment must be done with cash or card at the counter as you see here. There is no waiter or table service on this train. Having eaten a good sized lunch in Stockholm, I wasn't in the mood for another cooked meal and just settled for a cold pasta salad. It was pretty good. Around an hour after leaving Stockholm, the line becomes very rural and quite remote. There is an awful lot of countryside here. The countryside is fantastic as long as you like trees. There's also the opportunity to see small, quiet Swedish towns where you would never normally visit. It's quite a surreal experience. At about 10 PM I decide it's time to go to bed. I actually convert the middle bunk instead of the bottom one because it's easier for me to have a look out of the window. The bedding on these trains is very fresh and comfortable. There's also a fabric style safety guard which you can just about see here. It's kind of connected with a seat belt and this will stop you from rolling out of the bed during the night. I tend to sleep pretty well on trains, but I surprised even myself by getting a full 8 hours unbroken sleep on board. The next morning the scenery looks much the same, but there is a lot more snow. We're now in the Arctic Circle. It's time for me to take a shower. The showers are only accessible by keycard to passengers in the sleeper accommodation, not couchettes or seats. These are some of the smartest showers I've ever seen on a train. They're smart and clean, towels and shampoo are provided, and there's also a hairdryer here for good measure. I think the best thing about this train is the fact that it has a shower on board. Okay, don't expect any miracles with the pressure, but it's so nice to be able to wake up, have a shower and feel like a completely new person in new clothes. Anyway, we're about half an hour away from the town of Kiruna in the north of Sweden. I'm going to go and check out what there is for breakfast in the dining car. The Narvik portion of this train, my train, has split overnight and there's a different dining car which is now at the back of the train. It's certainly got interesting decor, much more retro than the one that I was on the previous evening. This dining car works in exactly the same way as the one that I visited the night before. There's still a reasonable selection of food and drink. One thing that's really interesting about this dining car is that all of the seats appear to be movable. They're almost like wicker chairs that you can move around on the floor. I really can't place what era the decor in this carriage is from. Why don't you have a go at guessing in the comment section below? However, the scenery outside is absolutely fantastic, as to be expected. I had a small roll and coffee for breakfast. Apparently this is turkey and cheese. It wasn't too bad. I paid about 50 krona for it. Something I really love about these old carriages is that if you're at the end of the train, like I am here, you can look out of the back window and see the track disappear behind you. It's certainly a novelty. This whole carriage just feels like a complete time warp. I'd be really interested to find out exactly when this carriage was built. Shortly after 9:30 we approach Kiruna, a mining and tourism town in the very north of Sweden, in Lapland. There's also a spaceport and space research centre here. Apparently Virgin Galactic are going to be a tenant of Spaceport Sweden, located next to Kiruna. The train stops here because the locomotive needs to change ends. However, most of the people that I can see getting off the train here appear to be skiers and not astronauts. It's actually not quite as cold as these pictures make it look. This was filmed in April and it was about 2 degrees above freezing, so the thaw had just started. After Kiruna, the train heads even further north towards Torne Trask, a giant frozen lake and the mountain ranges that stand between us and Narvik. The railway line we're currently on is the Swedish Iron Ore Line. The first section opened in 1888 and it was fully open all the way to Narvik in 1903. Incredibly, this line was fully electrified as far back as 1923. It's an engineering marvel. There are enormous snow canopies like this to protect the overhead line, the track and infrastructure from the risks of rockfall and avalanche. (1,634 kilometers from Stockholm, we approach the lonely place of Riksgränsen. This is the last town in Sweden. Both Norway and Sweden participate in the Schengen free travel zone, and therefore there are no customs or passport formalities to be sorted out here. The only clue that you're actually going into a different country is located on the side of the tunnel wall, here. You can see the flags change from Swedish to Norwegian. Blink and you'll miss it. Just a few hundred yards later, the train bursts out into the open, and we're in Norway. Narvik lies 1,674 kilometers by rail from the Swedish capital Stockholm, and we arrive bang on time at 12:54, just in time for lunch. This is the end of the line, and it's also the furthest north I've ever been in my life. And so that's it. Here I am in Narvik, Norway, right in the heart of the Arctic Circle. What an epic 18 hours of travel that was. I really hope that you enjoyed coming with me. Don't forget to head to dashlane.com/Paul and enter coupon code Paul at checkout to receive 10% off premium courtesy of the nice people at Dashlane. As for me, I'm off to my hotel. I'll see you in a few days with another video. Bye.